We're TTB, the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau.
Welcome to TTB Bootcamp Wineries. This segment of the series will go beyond the basics and walk you through what to expect during the winery application process and give you insight as to the different types of winery permits that TTB has available. The average processing time for an original winery application in fiscal year 2023 was 66 days, and in fiscal year 2024 is down to 56 days. We receive approximately 10,000 original applications a year between all our commodities, with amendments varying between 20,000 to 30,000 per year. This presentation is designed to help you understand the type of winery permit that you should apply for and what information you will need to submit with your application to make the process a relatively smooth one. The slides for this presentation are available on the Bootcamp page at ttb.gov for future reference material. First, our disclaimer. This presentation is not intended to establish any new guidance or set forth any new policy. Our goal is to help you understand the laws and regulations administered by TTB. Also, the information we're sharing today could at some point be superseded and become outdated. So, always consult the most recent regulations for current requirements. In this Beyond Basics presentation, we will be covering the different types of wine permits, application requirements, the application process, and giving you an in-depth explanation as to the difference between alternating proprietorship agreements, alternating premises, and custom crush agreements. We will wrap up the presentation with a list of resources for any further information you may need. Next, we will review the typical TTB touch points for wine industry members. First, you must qualify as a bonded winery and obtain a basic permit if needed. Not every bonded winery requires a basic permit, but we will get to that on a later slide. If your product requires formula approval, you will want to go to ttb.gov and register for a Formulas Online account if you do not already have one. Now it's time to start producing your wine, making sure you keep required records as you go. When you are issued your wine registration and/or permit, it comes with an informational letter that outlines record-keeping requirements along with many other useful pieces of information in the operation of a winery. So hold on to that. You will then apply for a label. You can use your Formulas Online account to do this if you have registered for one, and if not, go to ttb.gov to register for a Colas Online account. Then it's time to bottle your wine, label it, and remove it from your winery. Again, it's important to keep the appropriate records. Now we have reached the fun part: filing taxes, paying taxes, and filing your operations reports. Wineries are only required to file tax returns if they have taxable removals from their winery during the tax period. At a minimum, if a winery has no taxable removals during the tax year, they are required to file an annual operations report. If your winery experiences any changes after initial qualification, such as you have expanded your building to include an addition, changed your DBA name, or added an alternating tenant in an alternating proprietorship agreement, you will need to file an amendment to your permit. All companies that produce wine for commercial purposes must apply for a bonded winery permit. Per 27 CFR 24.75, you may produce wine for personal use not to exceed 200 gallons per calendar year for a household in which 2 or more adults reside, or 100 gallons per year for a household if there is only one adult residing. There is a line on the winery operations report to report the wine that is produced and removed for personal use. The storing, bottling, and blending of untaxed paid wine also requires a winery permit. The type of winery permit will be determined based on the operations that are taking place on bonded winery premise. If you intend to wholesale or import wine products, you will apply for the applicable permits related to those activities. As I mentioned on the last slide, to engage in the commercial production, blending, cellar treatment, storage, or packaging of wine, you need to apply for a bonded winery permit. We have two types of bonded winery permits. The first one, and the one we received the most applications for, is a bonded winery permit. This permit authorizes the facility to produce wine through the fermentation of grapes, citrus fruits, and other suitable agricultural products. They also blend, bottle, and store wine. The bonded winery permit allows you to wholesale the products you produce. If you would like to wholesale products that other wineries produce, you would then apply for a wholesaler permit in addition to the bonded winery permit. The second type of winery permit we offer is the bonded wine cellar permit. A bonded wine cellar is a bonded storage warehouse established to store and ship non-tax paid wine and tax paid wine, but may also blend wine with like-kind wine and then bottle wine. A bonded wine cellar would also need to obtain a wholesaler permit to sell wine to wholesalers and retailers. In the instance that you were interested in importing wine, you would need to obtain an importer permit. The bonded winery permit and the bonded wine cellar permit do not allow for importing. A tax-paid wine bottling house is a premises established primarily for the receipt and bottling or packing of tax-paid wine. Aside from bottling, a tax-paid wine bottling house may also engage in related activities such as rebottling, relabeling, clarifying, packaging, and repackaging tax-paid wine for the purposes of preservation. They can also package and repackage tax-paid wine in casks. A tax-paid wine bottling house may alternate premises with a bonded winery. At the time the tax-paid wine bottling house starts its operations, it is required to hang signage throughout the bonded premises stating that a tax-paid wine bottling house is in operation and the premises is not bonded while tax-paid operations are being conducted. The signage comes down when the operations are complete and the facility goes back to being a bonded wine premise. The wholesaler basic permit allows you to engage in the business of purchasing wine to sell to wholesalers and retailers. The premise address for a wholesaler should be the location where they are doing business, such as interacting with and invoicing customers. For instance, you could not have a P.O. box or a storage unit as your premise address on your permit. An importer basic permit authorizes the holder to engage in the business of importing wines into the United States. Like the wholesaler basic permit, the premise address cannot be a P.O. box or a storage unit. Now let's talk about the regulatory application requirements that the TTB operates under. Under the Internal Revenue Code, all wine producers must register their wine premise and receive a registry number, even if the alcohol content is under 7%. We follow the regulations to ensure protection of the federal tax revenue by examining the security of the wine premise in the application process. The paper form TTB 5120.25 is the application to establish and operate wine premises. This form is built into the Permits Online system that we use for the application process. TTB's application system Permits Online is set up to address all the questions on the TTB form 5120.25 and allows for the uploading of any documents that are required for the permitting process. Under the Federal Alcohol Administration Act, or better known as the FAA Act, proprietors must apply for a basic permit to engage in the business of producing, importing, or wholesaling wine and receive a permit number. This does not apply to wineries under 7% for federal purposes, but before applying for a permit for a winery under 7% that does not require a basic permit, you should check with your state to see if they require one. Many times, proprietors will have to reapply for a bonded winery for alcohol over 7% in order to meet their state requirements. The FAA Act also helps to ensure that only qualified businesses enter the industry. The paper form F5000.24 excise tax return is also set up in Permits Online. Before you start the application process and permits online, you will want to make sure that you have all the documents that you need available and scanned into your computer, preferably PDFs. Depending on your business structure, you will need your articles of incorporation or organization, LLC documents or operating agreement, partnership agreement, or bylaws on hand. You will also need a deed and/or lease agreement for the business premises. This deed or lease must be in the business or DBA name, signed by both the landlord and tenant, and must also show the full premise address. A TTB F5100.1 signing authority for corporate officials is required for many applications. A diagram or narrative of the winery premises is required for all wineries and should be shown or described in feet and inches. At a minimum, it should identify the bonded areas, tax paid area, if any, and the entrances and exits. The specialist reviewing the application should be able to tell if there is a wall and doors separating the bonded winery and any tasting room you may have. Most new wineries will not be required to file an actual wine bond. The PATH Act of 2017 gave relief to small wineries in that they are still considered bonded premises, but they do not actually have to carry a bond if they expect to not be liable for more than $50,000 in tax for all facilities under their employer identification number. If you believe you will need to file a bond, fill out and attach TTB Form 5120.36 Wine Bond. A Power of Attorney Form TTB F5000.8 is used for individuals that are going to represent your company with the TTB, such as employees, attorneys, and consultants. A Consent of Surety Form TTB F5000.18 is required when you have a bond and you would like to conduct additional operations not covered under your bond, such as an alternation of premises and adding a non-contiguous premise. If you were to add a non-contiguous premise to your permit, you would file a consent of surety to extend your bond to also cover the non-contiguous premises. A variance request is a letterhead notice you submit when you are requesting permission to use an alternating procedure in lieu of one outlined in the regulations. The most common variance we see in wineries is when we have alternating proprietors who are alternating the entire winery with no designated space for the tenant. This is an issue because a winery is required to keep their records on the bonded winery premise. So in this instance, the tenant would file a variance to keep their records at an alternate location. Source of funds documentation is generally not required, but may be requested at any time by the specialist reviewing your winery application. To get your application process off to a great start, have all the documents we just discussed readily available. At ttb.gov, you will be able to register for a Permits Online account, which is our current permitting system. Once you are in Permits Online, there is a database wizard that will assist you in creating an application that you want. You will start and apply for an entity application. We will get into that in a later slide. Then you will have your commodity application, which is the type of winery you want to apply for, and the personnel questionnaires that will be filled out for the owners, officers, and others who have control over the regulated operations. The individual who is registered for the Permits Online account and submitting the application should be someone who you have designated as signing authority or power of attorney. Those are the only individuals that TTB staff will discuss your account with. Now let's talk about how Permits Online organizes your information. There are two different kinds of records in Permits Online. You have the entity record, which equates to a single company or business entity, which is represented by your employer identification number. The type of information stored in the entity record are items such as owner and/or officer information, signing authority information, powers of attorney forms, and generally anything associated with the business structure. The other type of record is the commodity record. This record is created for each TTB regulated operation. that the entity is approved to conduct, such as winery and/or wholesaler. You will always have at least one entity record and one commodity record, but you could have multiple commodity records under one entity, such as a winery and a brewery or DSP. As I just mentioned, when you first apply to start your TTB regulated business, you will need to complete one new entity record, at least one commodity record, and personnel questionnaires for everyone who owns 10% or more interest in the company or who manages the day-to-day operations of the business. The process is much smoother if all personnel questionnaires are submitted with the original application as opposed to the specialist requesting them. When filling out the personnel questionnaire, you want to make sure that you will answer all the questions if they pertain to you. If you need to file an amendment related to your business entity after initial qualification, you will file that amendment in the business entity application. If you have multiple changes to the business, such as adding a new officer, removing a power of attorney, etc., you may submit these changes at the same time. This organization chart is an example of what a company structure can look like within TTB's system. You have the entity, which holds the corporate information, and then the commodity holds a brewer's notice for a brewery, a winery permit, and a distilled spirits plant permit. They are all tied together in one record. Now let's move on to what types of changes your entity must report to the TTB with an amendment in Permits Online. A legal change in business name must be reported with the supporting documentation. Controlling ownership or a change in control of the company must be reported within 30 days of the change, or it will be considered untimely. Reporting changes to general partners or stockholders of 10%, changes in corporate officers and/or directors. You will report these changes along with supporting documentation and personnel questionnaires if you are adding individuals. If you are adding a signing authority or power of attorney form, you will submit those amendments along with the appropriate forms. If you are revoking a power of attorney, ensure that this amendment is filed by a person with signing authority, or if it is filed by a person with power of attorney, there must be a letter signed by an individual with signing authority revoking the power of attorney. A person with power of attorney cannot revoke another power of attorney. If you will be terminating all TTB regulated operations, you will want to file that termination at the entity level. You will also submit your last tax return and operations report and mark them as final. You will file a commodity amendment when any change occurs within your winery. If you want to move your winery to a new location, you will file an amendment for a change in location, provide updated descriptions of the premises, and upload a new lease or deed along with a diagram into Permits Online. If you are changing the bond, you must file for a superseding, strengthening, or adding bond amendment. If at any time you perform construction on your building or change the use of buildings, such as adding a tasting room or addition to the building, you must report those changes to TTB. The same thing goes if you are going to change your operations in any way from the last time you completed the application. If you are adding or changing your DBA, you will want to update your application so the DBA name can be reflected on your permit. Sometimes people opt to receive their mail at a corporate office or their home and will periodically need to change their mailing address. You will want to make sure you receive all our communications by mail. Within the commodity amendments, you can also add or remove trade names, non-contiguous premises, alternation of premises, alternation of proprietors, variances, and alternate methods you would like to request. If you have multiple locations or types of operations and you would like to only terminate one of them, you will do so at the commodity level. This will leave your entity intact and any other TTB permitted operations you have established in place. After you submit your application, it is assigned to a specialist for review, and applications are worked in the order that they are received. When the specialist reviews your application for accuracy and completeness, If there are any corrections to be made, they will notify you through Permits Online, and you will have the opportunity to go into the application and make corrections and upload any missing documents. When your application is approved, Permits Online will send you an email letting you know the status, and the copies of your permit will be available in your Permits Online account for you to print. Before you apply for your permit, you should have your building constructed and ready to operate. On a case-by-case basis, applications may be referred to the Trade Investigations Division for an on-site investigation, which is when an investigator will come out and ensure the information you are provided in your application is accurate and work with you to make sure you are ready to start your business. After all the required checks have been completed, a recommendation for final action is made and you are notified of next steps. We see various errors when people submit applications. Here are the top 5 errors we see when a winery application is submitted. When describing the alternating areas in an alternating premise agreement, many people will leave out all the areas and equipment that are to be shared and the types of separation between the winery and the other commodity they are alternating with. When describing the winery premises building, the type of construction needs to be listed, such as brick, building with concrete floors, wooden barn with loft, etc. It is also important that dimensions of the winery are listed in this description. The diagram generally does not give us this information. It is important for the TTB to know where you will be storing your tax-paid wine and how it will be stored. Tax-paid wine cannot be on bonded premise, so give a clear description of how you will separate it from untax-paid wine in bond. We receive many applications without documents attached, such as a narrative, diagram, and a lease. Make sure to refer to what to gather before you apply to save yourself time. The premise address you input into Permits Online must match your lease and deed exactly. You will find that the state regulators are very strict with this also. When requesting a variance for record storage or annual inventory dates, you must place the entire body of the variance request into the request for variance table. Many people submit a DBA name that is exactly the same as their business name. You do not want to do that. Your permit would read XYZ Alphabet Company doing business as XYZ Alphabet Company. The purpose of the DBA name is to be different from the company name. Additionally, make sure to check that certification box next to the DBA name. We cannot process it without that. Let's discuss alternating premises, alternating proprietors, and custom crush arrangements and what makes each one unique. An alternating premise is used by the same owner to conduct another TTB regulated business. For instance, if you have established yourself as a winery and decide that you would like to make beer at the same premises, you would file to add a brewery as an alternating premises to that location. In an alternating proprietorship agreement, 2 or more persons or entities take turns using the same space and equipment to produce wine. You have the host winery and the tenant winery. The host may have multiple tenants. When an individual or a company enters into a custom crush arrangement with a TTB bonded winery, it involves a formal contract. The customer is paying the bonded winery to produce the wine for them, after which the customer markets the wine. The producer of the wine will hold a bonded winery permit, and the custom crush agreement can have either a wholesaler permit or a bonded winery permit. If you decide you would like to establish an alternating premise in your winery for a brewery or a distillery, you will need to do a few things. You will file a new application for whichever operation you wish to establish, as well as file an amendment to your winery permit to add the alternating premise. In each of these applications, you will need to supply an alternating premise diagram showing which areas will be alternating. If you carry a bond, that will also need to be updated. Within the application itself, you will describe how the alternation of premises is going to work and how tax-paid or untax-paid wine, spirits, and/or beer will be segregated. Let's move on to alternation of proprietor and the requirements associated with this arrangement. Generally, you will have a proprietor of a wine premise that agrees to rent out or share space with a new tenant. This is a mutually beneficial arrangement in that the host maximizes the use of their facility and equipment, and the tenant can get started in the wine business with a very low overhead cost. The tenant will submit a new application for a bonded winery permit, and the host will submit an amendment to their permit to add the tenant as an alternating proprietor. Each of these applications requires an alternating proprietorship agreement signed by an individual assigning authority and a diagram showing which areas of the winery will be alternating and which areas will be dedicated space for the tenant, if any dedicated space is allotted to them. If the tenant has no dedicated space, then they must file a variance for the record storage under 27 CFR 24.300. Place of maintenance records for records to be stored in an alternating location. TTB considers custom crush arrangements to be ordinary commercial arrangements. In these arrangements, the contract winery retains the title to the wine at least until the wine is tax paid or removed from the winery. The contract winery is entirely responsible for producing the wine, keeping appropriate winery records, labeling the wine in its name and address, obtaining necessary certificates of label approval, or as we call them, COLAs, and paying tax at the appropriate rate upon removing the wine from the winery. All right, let's compare alternating proprietorships versus custom crush qualifications. In an alternating proprietorship, each alternating proprietor must qualify independently as a bonded winery under Part 24 of the Code of Federal Regulations and obtain a federal basic permit under Part 1 of the CFR as a wine producer to conduct operations at a specific location. In this instance, the tenant does not need to be qualified as a wholesaler because the wine they are producing is considered his or her own production. It is not sold to the tenant by the host winery. In a custom crush agreement, only the wine producer must register as a bonded winery under CFR Part 24 and obtain a federal basic permit under CFR Part 1 as a wine producer. A custom crush customer who intends to market wine to other dealers must qualify as a wholesaler and obtain a wholesaler permit under CFR Part 1. Continuing, let's compare alternating proprietorship versus custom crush qualifications. The alternating proprietors must comply with requirements in 27 CFR Part 24 Subpart 0 by keeping records of its operations and by providing operational reports to TTB. A contract winery is responsible for keeping records of wine produced and removals and must provide operations reports to TTB. A wine purchaser in a custom crush agreement has no responsibility for records or reports under 27 CFR Part 24, although that person may be required to maintain records as a retailer or wholesale dealer in wine under 27 CFR Part 31. Who is responsible for federal excise taxes in an alternating proprietorship and custom crush agreement, you might wonder? A federal wine excise tax is paid at the appropriate tax rate by the proprietor that removes the wine from bond for consumption or sale. The rate of tax is determined by the tax class of the wine removed, and the tax rate may be reduced if the taxpayer produces the wine and is eligible for the Craft Beverage Modernization Act, or CBMA, tax credit. Keep in mind that you must be the producer of that wine to take CBMA tax credit. There are a few exceptions for a tax credit transfer, and certain requirements must be met to qualify for the transfer, and those are addressed in the tax section of the Wine Boot Camp series. Here are some indicators that one party to an alternation is not, in fact, involved in production operations and may not qualify for a producer's permit. A business plan that is primarily to market alcohol beverages with little or no involvement in the production of the alcohol beverage. A contract for alternation that is based on quantity of alcohol beverages produced and not on rental of space or equipment. An agreement that indicates an alternating proprietor will have minimal involvement in its own production, contract sales, that another company employees will handle the production activities, records, reports, and tax filings. After we review the information submitted regarding the potential custom crush arrangement, if it is evident from our reading of the agreement or contract submitted that an alternating proprietor applicant plans to have most or all of its wine operations conducted by another bonded winery, we may find that the applicant has no intention of conducting winery operations and is therefore not qualified for a permit under 27 CFR 1.24b. If the agreement or contract indicates a custom crush arrangement, they may instead qualify for a wholesaler basic permit. Here is a list of resources for applying for a permit, permits online customer page, permits online tutorial, state alcohol beverage authorities, alcohol FAQs, maintaining compliance in a TTB regulated industry, and for the overview of the application process, laws, regulations, and public guidance. We hope this information helps you better understand the different types of winery permits the TTB offers, the winery application process, and difference between alternating premises, alternating proprietors, and custom crush arrangements. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at the general office number 877-882-3277. For more specific inquiries or additional contact information, you can visit ttb.gov. To stay up to date on the latest TTB news and updates, we encourage you to sign up for the TTB newsletter. You can do this by searching for TTB newsletter in your favorite search engine and then selecting the subscribe now link. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to check out the other segments in our Boot Camp for Winery series available on ttb.gov.
Visit TTB's official YouTube channel at USTTB.gov for more TTB-related content. And remember to click subscribe so you'll always know when we upload new videos.